Boyles, welcome one more time to the shoot. And by the way, last week's shoot was spectacular with John Vandermeer, and it's up the same place this one will be. You go to our website, 710KNUS, and click on me, and it'll scroll down, and then you'll see it. The one we did last week with John Vandermeer was a true labor of love, and you can see all the people who have watched it and loved it, and it means so much to me. This one is something that we have been thinking about doing forever. And thank you, first of all, to Mark Crowley. Really thank you to Mark Crowley, because he worked extra on putting this one together. And this is about radio producers. Now, radio producers are a separate class of human being. When I first broke into the business as a talk show host, and we worked at legendary KWBZ, there were no radio producers. It was the likes of Alan Berg and those early pioneers of this business who we didn't understand so much. We cowboys so much of what we were doing. There wasn't anybody sucking air that was going to come in and say, "Hey, Alan, I got an idea." Listen, we kind of go. We had, there were guys that, would feed you the news, but not radio producers. So when I get to KOA Radio, and there was a guy that worked there whose name was Larry Crandall. And Larry was a wonderful guy. And he kind of left Bird alone, but I had my own guy I'd work with, and he did a bunch of other work as well. And as the business progressed, as talk radio got more sophisticated and we got away from our cowboy jungle gym ways and we were trying to focus this, then enters the dragon. We get producers. And I always ignored them, thinking, okay. And then I started finding good producers. As you know, a little bit about my career, there was a hot moment with a producer. That's why I'm sitting here with these guys. But when I came over here to go to work, and I had been working with really good producers and some not so good, but they were always now part of the scene and what they do. So these three are so close to my heart, and I love them dearly. And it's like having, young men that you be around and you learn from and you watch. So first of all, Casey Bloyer is here. And Casey, when I first came over to 710 KNUS, Casey was my guy, and he now has gone on into the food and beverage industry.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And we had to knock a lot of weight off him to bring him in here today. Yes. And so he's here. Number two, I think the name that most people know in the city, because of all that he's worked at KO. We worked KHW together, and when Casey moved on, the first person I said was to get Billy Thorpe. And we go back so far that his brother was in middle school, and we went to the Ozfest together. And
he learned a lot.
And I have loved him like a son. And then finally, and if you listen to Stephen Tubbs, you get to hear some of the things, he's really become a part of it, very distinctive voice. And Leroy is not shy. And Leroy Daughenbaugh is here. He's not considered a shy human being in his shirt. So this is the banner class. And I know that there is one guy I want to mention because of all the years that he spent with Mike Rosen. It was Dave Lauer.
Oh, yeah.
And when Mike retired, Dave stayed for a while, and then Clear Channel, just for knowing the great producers. Dave was one. Billy, who else would you put in that list of the sports producers and
Big Sexy? Yeah, Big Sexy is a good one. I also, early on, Lori Bellows was a nice mentor that understood what was going on, and I loved some of her early work, especially George Weber and what she was doing with him. So she did a lot of it. Lauer was one that was a really big influence on me because he taught me what to pay attention to and what to ignore. Because there were times in which Rosen could get into one of those moods and get upset about timing, and he was the person that taught me that, no, even though that person over there behind the microphone thinks they're captaining the ship, their rudder doesn't do anything.
Well,
you have the rudder that actually gets to steer how this is going to go. They're in charge of the entertainment and making sure the execution of the show is there, but you're in charge of making sure that this thing arrives at its destination at the right time. And he said, you know why? Well, no, Dave, I have no idea. He said, because if you miss these things, you come in late, you miss these spots, they come in and yell at you, not the host. They yell at the producer. So he said, that's why it's your responsibility. So I learned a lot about how to look at and understand what was emotion and what was dealing with the show. So he helped me really delineate that. And it was incredibly clever.
Fool people that there's really two shows going on.
Yes.
The on-air show that I would be doing, and then the show that Billy would be doing or Casey would be doing. And I could see, first of all, how'd you get into the business? But I've seen you like full of phone battles. You got, the phone to ear. You're letting some guy have both barrels.
Yeah. It's a balancing act that when you first start doing it, you are failing miserably at it. I mean, there's so many things going on. You've got 7 monitors you're following.
Quick story. I come over here to go to work, and there's another guy that has done the morning show. And I've been, as they say, unceremoniously let go. And 3 days later, I got a gig to come here.
Yeah.
I was going to get choked.
And I walk in and meet this young man, and he said, I want you to know I'm leaving to go to afternoons. We did our first show together, and when it was over, he said, do you mind if I stay?
Yeah. Yep. The juice was flowing on that one. But yeah, it's a balancing act, and you have to learn how to find it. Even with callers, there's callers that want to monopolize your time, and you get to the point when you first get into it, I think you're trying to be nice to the callers.
Yeah.
And boy, over the years, you're like, name and topic.
Yep.
Nope, don't got time. You're moving on because you have to get that show. And I'll also say is when the host is on that show, 90% of what you're doing that, I'm not working on the next shows. I'm making sure this one's facilitating, but I know that I've got other shows coming up this week that I got to make sure that those are on track.
Yeah.
So you balance the on-air show with what's going on later in the week.
I come in this morning and please.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't care.
No, that's what I'm saying. When you first start, you like super nice, and by the end, you're like,
No.
stick that out there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that they don't understand that just the caller on the other side. There are a couple of things they have a hard time acknowledging, that just because you have the ability to put 10 numbers in a row doesn't give you a right to go on any radio station. And it's not about what you want to do, it's about making sure the show continues forward, and what are you going to contribute to that conversation? How are you going to make what's going on in the air better, or in some cases worse? And sometimes that can actually be a good thing if you take the show in a certain direction. And so they don't understand that. And the callers need to really understand that in many ways, and you talk about this a lot, Pete, is how they're records. And some records are Stairway to Heaven, and some records are a 2-minute pop song. And they're totally different. And you have to be able to, as a producer, recognize who those callers are. And it's your job to prep the talent. You have to tell them, expect this from this caller, this from this caller, this from this caller, and why. You've got to spend just enough time to figure out what they're going to do when you give them that airtime. And that's your role.
Leroy, you're the newest guy on the team, and you've got the background, different things.
Mm-hmm.
When did you come to radio?
About 3 years. Well, I did it in 2004 till about 2007. I was on KIQX in Durango and KDUR, which is Fort Lewis College.
Were you the on-air guy, or were you?
I was on air and I was producing my own because you were there by yourself. And I just did it so that I can teach my kids that you can do anything you want in life as long as you knock on the door. Then I went back to driving. Of course, I've been a truck driver for 35 years. And just like Casey had said, the multitasking, I multitasked when I was actually driving. When you get into a truck, you multitask at least 60 times. Mm-hmm. Here you do about 70. So, so I got into it about 3 years ago, solid. KNUS is my first, and it's going to be my last till retirement, Like I've said in my other videos that I loved it, and I love everybody here. So all the help and stuff, like old Mr. Bill here, I follow his footsteps because he's given me a lot of great knowledge.
Billy
You know,
I usually was did the opposite. If he told me this,
I gotta go the other way. Then run.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I mean, same thing. Like, you know, I can kind of echo what they're saying about, you know, like the calls and stuff. A lot of them think that when they're calling, they think they're actually talking to you.
Yeah.
You know, they call you and they're like right down the line. This is what I want to say to you, and it's like, well, I'm not.
And you what? I get to cross over with Leroy because Saturday morning you have Jimmy.
Yes.
And so I'll come in and, you know, and you're the I don't know which one of you is the most verbal. I was thinking that when I was
That's a good question.
and they're all willing to get in fights and, you know, and there's no give and, you know, you don't want a guy.
I'd say Bill's probably the most eloquent.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Like he's I'm just me.
But you were always willing.
Yep.
You want to fight? I got you, Maldo. Let's go.
Yeah.
But people, there's a dynamic to talk radio and someday, right? But there's a dynamic in what you said that there are. Years ago, there was a magazine called Psychology Today, and the magazine's now defunct, but it did a piece on who calls talk radio. And there's some legendary callers now. In fact, you were beating one of them up one came along this morning.
Yeah, one of our favorites.
Yeah, but, you know, like we have just gone through 2.5 years of the most intense, and I call it angertainment radio, and it focuses principally on Donald Trump, stolen election, any number of stuff.
All right.
Have you guys ever witnessed anything like that before?
It's for me not being in it anymore. Watching it, I was like, man, these are some fun and easy shows to produce, man. And it's like, here's a tailor-made topic that you don't have to every day.
How much of it can you do?
Yeah, that's the thing. And I think that's the biggest balancing act with the story is how long you stay with something to where it becomes stale.
Yeah.
And then you roll out of it. It's very hard. I mean, we had it with Mayor Hancock. I mean, we had one where we were pounding it, and it got to the point where me and Crowley went to Pete and we're like, hey, man, it's dead. We got to move.
Well, it's all true.
Yeah, we got to move.
Raleigh is also a very, the spiritual advisor.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's true. I like what you said about knowing how long that story can run. And that can be true for inside a single show or over the course of days or even weeks, because there can be a time in which you've got a topic and it could pan out to be at 45 minutes. You can be done with it.
Yeah.
Nothing else you can do with it. But sometimes it can run for 3 hours. And there are other times you've got stories that have an arc that go days and days and days. The one that I would say is close to the chaos of this one, there are two of them that come to mind. The first one would be John Benet Ramsey.
Yeah.
That's just chaos, but it's not that it wasn't the insanity that this really the last 2 years were. The other one was post-Columbine. And again, not to say insanity. That was a hard, difficult series of shows to do, but it was on a different level because of where the conversation was and because you didn't have, for example, with Columbine, you didn't have people calling in and going, no, that was a false flag operation.
Yeah.
You didn't have that level.
It comes later.
Yeah, it comes much later. And so those are the two that have the intensity. There was nothing like this last couple of years.
Leroy, because when you open a door, walk in, it's game on.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't have a chance to take a deep breath. You're thrown into the fight. Your thoughts about all of this now? Because, you're principally with Jimmy, but principally with Steph.
With Stefan, yeah. Usually, I mean, of course, we're collaborate. He gives me what he wants, and I tell him what I got, and basically, I give him crumbs, so this way the story lasts a little bit longer. So this way I don't give him everything now, so it fades out tomorrow. I try to get enough information that day to keep the listeners to want to come in tomorrow.
I filled in for Stefan, and this is an attribute. Leroy's got it all lined up on the computer.
I do.
I'm not that sophisticated. I'm just
They got 90 million pieces of paper.
Yeah. That he does. Yes, no assembly.
But he generally knows where everything is. I used to get angry, like, geez, Pete got all his paper. And he's like, well, it's right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He would be in the middle of the
Right where it was. You knew.
and producers and on-airs can get into fights with you.
Yeah. And I think they should. I think that in order for it to be done properly, you should, but you don't necessarily want to get personal. You're not trying to tear down each other, but you need to have the ability to come at each other for the topic and to make the show better. And you guys would fight, it would become personal, but it was a fight about to make the show better.
And then we'd laugh after the show.
Exactly. And Pete and I would get some knockdown drag off, but it was it was no, the topic is here, and this is where we have to do it, and you're not approaching this. And they no, it sits over here, and why? And we talked about, Pete and I was talking about, and I still do with George now, is where that energy in the conversation lives. Because if you can find where that energy is in the topic and the conversation, that's where the radio show needs to live. Because if you're doing anything other than finding where that energy is in either side, you're wasting your time. Don't think you're on my deal.
Him and I fed off chaos together.
Yeah,
I think that's what was really great about us. When it,
Threw things at each other.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
they were not for family ears. When
No, but and then people would think,
we didn't like each other.
yeah, I mean, there were. You got to get those in.
He's still talking to each other. Yeah, let's go. So
I love her seeing him more.
yeah. We never. It was out of sight, out of mind.
Yep.
I would go in.
You would hear us stumble all.
I would go in and kiss Billy on the top of the head and say, "I love you. See you in the morning."
Yep.
And you know, it's what I do with my son and my grandson, and that we can get in a war.
Yep.
But it's over the show.
Yeah.
It's over when the product of the show. I had a few choice words for you. I remember a bunch of Ellie Michaels walked by, looked at me.
Oh yeah.
Are we good? Yeah, we're good. What are you? Yep.
When the bosses come by, and you can see them pick up their step, like there are two guys who are in there like pugging, but it makes it. And the other thing that's happened, I was thinking about this last night when I knew we were going to do the show. Now, producers have become a very important part of the show. Back in the day, thousands of years ago, when dinosaurs walked the earth, the producer never came on the evening. And now, when in the Tub Show in the afternoon, they're significant. When you open the show with George, and we used to do it together, and then with Casey, Casey, what do you think? And anytime there were sports questions, or anytime there were, any numbers of things, give it to Casey. And so that part of it's changed, that you guys really are on-air guys.
Yeah, you have to be, and you have to have the instincts to be on air, to know how long you need to go and then when to dial it back, and where to fill those spaces. It's almost the idea of, in many ways, that together as a team you're playing jazz. That you have to understand what notes have to be played, but also what notes not have to be played. Why you're leaving gaps here. And there's times I always tell everybody that I never turn on that microphone without knowing exactly why I'm doing it. There's always a strategy behind it. Even though it may look like and sound like chaos, there is a reason why I'm injecting myself into the conversation at that point. There's a goal that I'm trying to get the show to. I'm trying to get us to a certain place, and I need to push us in that direction and cut off some of the other slack that's going on. And it's really important.
Were there moments when you and I were together where you just went like, this is...
Every day.
But that's the more that I get. Just read the live copy. Just read the live copy. You're 9 behind. We have 20 minutes.
Play through that.
No, I'll catch up with them, and then you've got 3 segments of that. I think the only time when me and Mark had to come to you about the second Mayor Hancock's, and not Players and Sugar, because that was when you were still over at K-How. But the second time that he got into something, I mean, you were. That's the one thing that's great about Pete. He's a pit bull.
You know what that was? That was about the woman police officer.
Yep.
That he had. I didn't believe.
Yep.
That he had accosted.
And you just were on it. And me and Mark had to come to you and be like, "Hey man, this story's dead."
Oh, and the reason, and I got locked into it, was they were putting out the bait cops. And they were arresting people for doing what these guys had done. And they weren't going down for it. And
Teflon Hancock.
Yeah.
And it was like, and actually Julie Hayden and I, here's a story. We went, and this guy was an airman out at Buckley. And I don't know to this day if he was trying to buy the bait cop. But they took his truck, and they took him, and they called his CO. And remember, they used to have John's Television. and they would roll the pictures of these. In the meantime, under Players and Sugar, all of these incredibly wealthy and athletes and prominents were getting away with it. So Julie and I bought the guy's truck out, and we embarrassed Hancock. And he said that he would give us half of the bill to get the guy's truck out, and he never did.
No.
And I think somebody confronted him, and he coughed the money. But no, that things like that to me, they're unfair. They're bullying, and the Ramseys was a classic. These were parents that were getting away with it.
Yes.
That was a fascinating when we had the Whites in
White, Silla White,
the only man to do time.
and I was in that case. I'd been subpoenaed, and
That was a fascinating show.
I was in Taj Mahal for the third time. This time the judge knows me by my first name.
Nice.
And I'm copping press shield. I don't need to tell you.
Yeah.
They didn't know if talk radio had a press shield.
Okay.
And they thought they thought we were just like who we are.
Yeah.
And I said, I have a press shield. I don't have to, because they wanted me to, who had shown me the ransom note was asked what this was all about. And I said, I have a press shield. And for 3 times, and the story ends up, or this little prosecutor wanted to jail me. And I, sure. And jump ahead in time. Years later, I'm with Tancredo, and actually they were going to do the Saturday show. And Frank D'Angelo's at a fundraiser. This guy walks up to me. He said, do you remember me? I said, no.
Oh,
He was the guy that wanted to throw me in jail for claiming I had a press shield. But talk radio ends up, I don't know if it could ever have a press shield again, given us.
yeah.
But we had a press shield. What moment scared you the most? Because we've had a couple. I was going to come up with the one when we found the guy in the hallway looking for me.
Yeah, I was looking for you. The people that show up unannounced, that think they need to come in and talk to you, and that's a scary one. There have been a couple of times that I have received some, at least they sound credible threats, and so that idea of how you approach and how you come in here.
After John Eastman.
There were a lot of those. There were a lot of those people that you're going to see this. We're going to come down here and we're going to do this. To this day, I still make a really wide circle around the parking lot before I park. Anytime I'm coming into work, because I want to see who's there. That one has been spooky. There were a couple of others when we're going through some of the Columbine things, and that there were some couple of scary ones there where people are getting angry about threatening because you're trying to make money off the dead kids and you're trying to do this. And those have been the ones that are really scary. But I learned from people like Mark Crowley that those people that are going to tell you they're going to hurt you are never the ones going to hurt you. It's the person, and that's why the guys outside in the hallway scared. That's spooky, because those are the people showing up without an ounce.
And that was post that the great John Eastman hang up.
And he wanted to fix it. He wanted to tell us why we were wrong.
Well, I think the scariest stuff was when we had bullet holes in our windows. When was that, Mark? About 6 months ago or something like that.
Yeah.
That was another radio.
I don't know if that was random, or whatever.
Yeah, but I was another radio station where we were doing that, and we got threats, and they were credible enough to where they found a bullet hole next to one of the windows near the studio, and they went in and put bullet.
With Sheriff, when I had to go to Sheriff Reams, and I can now say it, was Reams that tracked that guy down, threatened.
Oh wow.
Scary time.
I mean, anything we would do with Robert Spencer, or the nation of Islam and Al Qaeda and all that.
Yeah.
We had a couple run-ins with a couple people that got. We wanted to do a certain one, and Mark stopped us. He said, he goes, remember, guys, we're not the only ones working here. There's a lot of people that work in this building. Let's pull back.
That man, and he's sitting behind her running. This is retired Denver cop Mark Crowley, but he's more than that. He really is he's the heart and soul.
Never here. He's never here.
Yep.
He's always right.
He's the heart and soul. He'll come in. There's no question he will tell you. And this is all look behind the curtain for what talk radio is. And the producers are here. And then the relationship between, I've made a bunch of notes, between producers and sales.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh.
now
Native.
do we have to be censored on it?
Yeah.
No. But the sales department, and I learned long ago that sales department says, we make money for you. On-air guys say, we do great shows so you make money. And therein is the clash, and it's not going to ever change.
And it's always the producer's fault.
Yep.
Doesn't matter.
And it's true.
Always our fault.
Or you get threatened on air by sales. As Pete's looking through the glass, and I'm screaming back at him.
I remember that one. Then fights with salespeople. Yeah, that's always important.
And they always pick the word. They come in the middle of the show. Hey, I've got this client. I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah, not right
Here, not right now.
That's why I locked the door.
They're not.
and the issue is the tension between us as the producers and the sales is so strong, but they don't understand that we are also their greatest ally, because we can get the host to do what the host is telling them they don't want to do. We can grease those skids. We can make it happen. And they also don't understand sometimes that without us, it doesn't happen, because we're the ones that are dotting the I's and crossing the T's to make sure those scripts get on the air, so they get read and through the advertising.
I'm amazed at how they're in sales, so you have to be great with people.
Yeah.
You have to be able to do which you have all that. But I'm amazed at how many sales refs come in and they don't know the personality of the host.
Yeah.
And then I would have them, and I can remember one, and I'm not going to name names, but this person would tell Pete, "You have to do this." I was like, "Oh my!" No, he's never doing it. He's never. You tell Pete he has to do something. Oh yeah. I'm like, I would just look at this person and be like, "Cool, we're not doing that copy."
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's the guys are radio producers, and I think they're like these separate animals in a business that, in many ways, it's all division of labor. Radio, after you figure it out, after you hang around it for about 40 years, and you start to figure out, how radio works, and it works on a number of levels. There's a real deep spiritual part of it that I'm really discovering. And then there's the mechanics of it, and then there's the timing of it, and all the things that make great radio, that make not just some guy sits down, throws a mic switch, and says to some producer, "Hey, what are we doing today?"
Yeah.
And you guys have all had them.
No idea.
And there's no, like there's a term called show prep, and read the book. One of my powerful read the man's book before you invite him on the show. Read the book.
Those are my favorite shows.
Yeah, read this, read that, as opposed to the guy that would come in, sit down, and look at you guys and say, "What are we going to do?" And that guy's going to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it will. Because we, as a producer, our job is to make you better.
Yeah.
It is to shave off all the rough edges. And it's like on a theater production that we are the stage crew and the sound crew. We're doing everything. We're making the lights. We're setting the scenery. We're doing everything behind the scenes to make sure that when those spotlights hit, that you are the best light and that the show goes off flawless. But we have to deal with everything else behind the scenes. And a lot of times, that's...
You're also, three of you, you're keeping the dogs away.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And not only that, keeping you accurate too, because we're doing our research and stuff like that.
Yeah. You have to think for things there.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to do that second one.
And getting bold. I'm pretty bold because I tried getting El Chapo on the line. I didn't care, man. If I could get his voice on that phone, I would have been happy.
His job was doing mornings, man.
Yeah, part of it is because you have to have that ability to just take that leap. Because what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
They're going to say no.
Exactly.
Well, we already have a no if we don't do anything.
And me, I don't like taking no for an answer. So
Well, no is just no.
Yeah.
And you learn,
Better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
yeah.
one of our great.
We had a show here.
Yeah.
We were at the end of our show, and an owner of another station wanted to come on to dispute what Pete was saying.
Yeah.
He says, "I want my equal time." Well, we had another host that was supposed to come in. I told that person, "You're staying out. Pete, get back in that seat." We put this person on the air, and it was then 20 minutes of just fantastic radio. It was gold. I'm loving life. I'm sitting in.
It's when Tancredo, Randy, and all those guys, they all get fired.
Yep. And then we get done with the show, get the other host in, but as they're still on the air, Kelly Marcetti's mine comes by me. He goes, "You in my office after the show." I was like, I'm in trouble. I knew I was gonna be, but this is the great thing about Kelly Michaels. He pulls me in there. He goes, "I cannot have another station's voice on air. That cannot happen. That will not happen again." And I just, yep, absolutely. And then when he got done at the end of the conversation, he said, "But as a former producer, I'd have done the exact thing."
Yep.
All right, cool.
Yeah, the guy was going to try and weasel around me.
Yes, exactly.
And I threw another host says, "Get up, move, it's mine." And they were kind of looking at me and said, I got this.
Yeah. I didn't even give any. I'm like, back in the seat.
You have to ask forgiveness rather than permission, because you have to prove that you have to know that you can execute things. You and I, years ago, back on K-How, we literally created a station promotion out of nothing. Halfway through the show, I get a call from the general manager and from the program director going, "What in the is he doing?" That we started an entire contest. Like one book, one tender.
Yeah.
That meant right there.
Wow.
It invented it on the air. One day or so. And part of the reason was because they wouldn't answer us. We wanted to do it. We want to do it. And you were so frustrated. You were like, "I don't care. We're doing it." And he starts the promotion live on the air. I didn't ask anybody.
And the next day we had the governor with.
Yes, yeah, but, and then governor.
And the unique thing about Pete is he's the only host that can pull that off. He's the only one. I mean, I know that we've all had topics with him where I'm like, "Why are we doing this? This thing is going to blow up in our face. It's not going to be good." And then 3 hours later, I'm like, "Well, did it again."
Yeah.
That was freaking radio.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Because and that's where you have to know when. And I think he's the hardest, most challenging at that, because there's certain ones you're like, "Man, this is not going to go well." And then he pulls it off. And then you're like, "All right." So you have to know how to let him breathe.
Yeah, there are times I was hours afterwards going, "How did he execute?
I know.
How did he make this thing work?" And just dissecting it. And the genius time.
And you just start chuckling.
Yeah.
All right.
It's the best show prep story, hands down, ever. KOA, Alan Berg, and myself. And I did mornings because he couldn't wake up. He couldn't get up. Try afternoons. And so, but here he is. He's dressed like $1 million. I'm dressed like I am. And we had a little Passover time that we did. And we had an office third of the size of this. And Crandall's in there and myself and AB. So, I look like I look now, like I'm going to grad school, carrying junk in and out of the studio to make sure that at least. And he's got a piece of paper this big. And I see him in the hallway. I said, "What you got?" And he goes, gives it this. And I said, "What do you got?" And he said, "She's back." And I said, "What?" And they had seen the Virgin Mary in Cairo again.
Oh.
And the Virgin Mary had returned, and a bunch of Bedouins or somebody had seen the Virgin Mary. Said, "She's back." And I'm thinking, what's he going to do with this? And we sat below, and you could see all these phone banks, and everything is lit up. And the trunk lines are lit up at Channel 4 because we were in the Channel 4 building.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, they were burning up. And, he would do stuff like that. Now, I don't think there's no one in Denver that can pull that stuff off, but he was the one that could. And people have tried, and they failed miserably, that they didn't have whatever it was that he did to do that stuff. And to me, it was always like, read the man's book, read the articles, get here, 2 hours before the show starts, all this kind of stuff.
Which most hosts, I'll tell you, show 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm being on.
Yeah.
I think that's everyone.
Yeah, and you're like, "Oh, great, here we go."
Because you're not on the same team. It's the idea of getting ready before a football game, a basketball game, a baseball game, even a wrestling match, and not being there to talk to the coach and the team and not understand the game.
Yeah.
And it really hurts for
You never had to wonder what you were doing with people.
never.
All right, now, what would you say to somebody that's watching this right now who says, "I want to get into this business, given the shape of the business today, I want to be in this business, I want to produce, I want to be part of what these jokers are doing, or this old joker's done. We started with you. We'll start on the other end with Leroy. Leroy, what do you say to somebody that wants in?
I don't know. I think you'd have to say that, if you come in, that you'd have to be able to have open mind, a little bit, stick to your guns and be honest and take off with what you need,
Would you encourage them?
Oh, yes. I would. I mean, look at me. I was 35 years in a truck. 3 years ago, I jumped out of it. 3 months after I jumped out of it, I'm at KNUS.
You happy?
Yes, and very, very happy. I mean, I should have done this years ago, I mean, I should have done it years ago, but I've taken every opportunity, like that. And just like I've said in the other videos that I've done, I love being here because it's being with family, and you're not dissuaded from doing things, you're actually encouraged. So, and everybody watches each other back over here.
Billy's senior guy. I mean, Billy's been with me when he was a kid. Now he's with me as a father and a family.
Yeah, he was probably only your mom.
About that all is.
What would you say to eating? Because the business right now is floundering.
It's hard. The first thing I would tell them is you obviously need to stop drinking and you need psychological help. Because you have to ask them, do you really think you want to do this? Because the hours stink and you give up holidays, your time away from family, and this is emotional, and there's an intellectual burn that happens because of what we're doing.
Oh, yeah.
And the other thing I would want to know is I would ask them, and we delve into the why, but do you understand this medium? Do you understand how radio needs to be and should be used? Because if you just think you want to come on here and be part of the show and you're just going to try to join the cast and be a background singer or something, that's not what this is.
No.
There's a lot more emotion that goes into this, and you have to dive into it with both feet. And you have to be willing to give up a lot of time from family. You have to be able to get up in the middle of the night when it's dark.
Yeah,
and then, show up late at night after the family's already eaten dinner. So you lose some of these things, but do you understand what radio is? And spend time listening to music radio and talk radio and digest this media completely to understand the execution. And if you can do that, good. And the next thing you got to do is understand when you walk through that door, come in and say, I know nothing. And absorb as much as you possibly can, because it's all about learning. And that's what Leroy did. Leroy came in as a blank slate and just said, teach. What do I need to do? And he never said, how about, and he asked, how about if we do it this? Why are we doing it this way? What about this? But what he wanted to do was just absorb. Anything that Leroy could learn, that's what he tried to do.
The one of these guys that I saw grow the most was Casey. When I came on and put my arm around Casey. Now, Billy and I had already been through it. I only cross over with Leroy. But this young man and his family, and they become my family. And you are the one, and then you smartened up. Like in wrestling, they smartened you up.
And they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. But I miss it. There's days I miss it.
You and your brother still work.
Yeah, we still Sunday nights together. So you get I dip my toe in it. I just think the whole radio industry in the next 5 years is going to be vastly changed. I think with the podcasting, internet, and where all that is going
digital.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see where this whole organism is going to go.
When I'm asked that, and I'd say yes, but the rules will stay the same.
Agree.
Yeah.
The advantage that radio will continue to have will be the immediacy. That there's no other medium in which you can talk to the person behind the microphone as quickly. There's no other medium that can respond as quickly. And while podcasts are big, you never get to interact with a podcast host. Here, you have a direct way to interact with them. And I got to second the fact that Casey's grown, because I got to watch him both close up, but also the distance. When he started out, I knew people in this house, and I knew people that were here, and I know of Casey. And so I watched him from afar, and I heard these stories about how he was growing, and I was getting better. And I heard from Pete about Casey and what Casey's doing, and together, how this is a great team. And I got to second that. What you became is incredible.
Well, I think
really, I'm a lot of respect.
And you find your dish, like every producer's a little different. We all do something a little bit better. Billy's really good at the in-show, and knowing where to flow it and where to go. Leroy and I just recently met. One thing I've noticed from afar from you is you're not afraid to do anything. And that is huge as a producer, because if you're afraid to do something, you're going to be super weak.
Yeah.
I think I could. There's not a guest I couldn't get.
Yeah.
There's not a guest I couldn't get.
We could talk him into it.
Pete would say, I want this guy on. I'm like, all right. And then within a week, I'd be like, here we go.
One of the things that I always said as we come to the turn, I always wanted the ball.
Yeah.
And there are people that would back away, and we all know them. I wanted the ball. I truly did. Give me the ball. Let's see what this guy will do, but let's get me the ball. Let's see what he's got. This has been so much fun, and I've been wanting to do this, and the three of you, and I know everybody took time out of their day to come in and to do this, but one other guy, and he runs this whole show, is Mark Kraut.
Yeah. If Mark would have put the badge down and come home to be a radio producer, he would have been killer. And he is behind the scenes as far as what he does. But he might have, like you, he might have had to choke somebody out twice. But I love it because of that.
We for him because of that. Yeah, that's the one guy in this building that if he said we're doing this, I went, yes, sir.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yes, sir.
There's one when I write the book. There's a moment, and we are at the Donald Trump convention, and Cloudley lit some people up, and he was like,
He pushed him too far.
"Oh."
Now, before we go, I do have a question, though.
All right.
This is one I'm going to turn a little bit on you, though, but I want to ask Leroy, and you've worked a little bit with Pete.
Yes.
What is the thing that you find the best thing about working with Pete and the worst thing about working with him and another company?
The thing is that I grew up listening to Pete and Alan, so I knew of them, and I tell you what, when I was starstruck when I first got here and I saw Pete. I was starstruck, and I got emotional because I knew that they were in the past, and I saw them, and I was like, I get to work with the legend, and that's what I was like really happy about. The only thing that I just didn't like, I guess, was the tones of everything around him. I'm trying to produce a show, and I could hear the TV in the next room.
Yep.
That's that. But I'm just picking on you a little bit.
Oh, please.
But I love everything about him. I worked with him on a few shows, and I just love the way he does things. I love the dynamics, and of course, I've learned everything coming from you, and everybody else in here. And I tell you what, man, I love working with him. He's great, and I love working with Stefan and Jimmy. They're unique to themselves, and I guess I'm kind of a chameleon because of the fact that I can alternate and be that person for that person, and then like when Jimmy comes, I got to be that person for Jimmy, but not really for them, but kind of with them.
That's underappreciated. That's a really good talent.
You know what I mean?
Really good.
So you have to be kind of a chameleon because each one
We've just
different.
We've only worked together.
Yeah.
6-8 months.
You know what I mean?
Uh-oh. Well, he's not even on the payroll.
No, I just like that stopped me before. Pete and I are very similar we're a very similar person, and I'm also, if you can't tell me I can't do something, I'm like, oh, I'm doing it.
Yep.
And I think that's what made us work well together. As soon as they told both of us, we'd look at each other and smile, be like, oh, we're doing it. Yeah. We're really doing it now. Just that is friendship. Take away the radio stuff. Everybody asks me about Pete Boyles off the air. They're like, what's he like? I'm like, he's the nicest guy on the face. I was like, he'll give you the shirt off his back. He's just the neatest man. Like, he gets after people. I was like, yeah. I go, but that's on-air Pete.
Yeah.
I was like, on-air Pete is totally different than off-air. Because I know a lot of hosts who are the same on and off the air. They don't know it. And Pete is totally different. What drives me nuts, geez, where do I begin? One, keeping him on track with the X's and O's of like the live reads. When I made that joke earlier, there really were shows you're like, you've got 10 to do it.
Yeah.
It's come on, man, stay on track, on track. And I don't know. I think that's just the X's and O's trying to keep him on track. But other than that, and he would get distracted. Like the one topic I knew that every year would come up at a certain time, and I'm like, God, we're gonna spend a week on this. So, Bush and WMDs. Oh my gosh. I knew, I was like, this is going to be a week where I'm like, here we go again. And how do I because you got to let him have it.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that's very important to him. It's very but he would always want to take it longer and need to be like, Pete, we have to move on.
Yeah.
So he just has certain topics where you're like, yeah, we're going to be doing this for a minute again.
Oh, that is, and for me, it's the passion and the creativity, because Pete is always saying, he's always working through the next topic. He's always working how to make this the best topic, and his mind never stops going. Even when he's relaxing at home, he's still thinking of, how does this become a topic?
Yep.
How do I bring this to the show? And
Even if it's the funny show on Netflix that you watch, how can I tie this into the show?
What can I do? How can I use this? And to see that bit of what really is a creative genius is amazing. But as the distractions and the ADD, sometimes keeping him on track and understanding where the show needs to go, where sometimes it's squirrel. Yeah, and that's not very true. The guardrails back in it. That is the most difficult thing at times, because you can't get distracted. But sometimes those distractions can lead to something brilliant. Figure out when they like Dan Gummy. Yeah, like I shouldn't have. He's right.
Yep. Thousands and thousands of years ago, when I'm a young kid breaking into business, Denver was blessed with one of the best voices and best guys, and his name was Gus Merkus, another legend. And this is before Gus took the big chair, the morning show on KOA. And we were working together at a little daytimer called Cat Radio, and I'm a young kid coming in. And so Gus took me aside, and he said, you're smart. He said, you're funny, you're clever. And he said, let's go up to the corner, and there's a little restaurant up there on Colfax, and let's get a cup of coffee. So I went up sitting there and this guy really, I just had revere. And he said, he gave me this whole thing. He said, you're in school and you're doing these things. He said, you sure you want to be doing this? And I said, I do. He said, did you ever notice on Christmas Eve and Thanksgiving, New Year's morning, there's somebody on the radio? And I went, yeah. He said, well, this year it's you.
But you didn't say no.
But I said yes.
Well, and that's the key.
Always,
when you get into this, you better say no. Yes.
I told you the dog track story.
Yep.
I said, yeah, sure, I can do that.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it.
Real quickly, favorite guest to have on with Pete? You might have one because it's just shorter lived, but
oh, that's a tough one. That's a really good one, because I like. Yeah, I do. There's somewhere the Robert Spencers, the things where you can eat
consistent ones that are always there that you're going to discount.
Meltzer.
Yep, that's mine. Brad Meltzer is Meltzer, because it would go fun way. Yep.
But your kids were always coming.
Yeah. But he was just a neat dude.
Brad thinks about things on the same level that Pete does, and not a lot of people do that because of the depth and knowledge of history, plus the connection to current events and politics. Mm-hmm. And you and Brad together are saying amazing. Those are incredibly unique shows.
And he's very accessible. I got him on the Morning Dan Lead Dive. No publicist, no nothing. I texted him and said, hey, we want to have you on to talk about Stan Lee. He was like, give me 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So,
one of a kind guys, and I love these three, and
we're all broken.
Love Mr. Crowley, and it's we are doing the Saturday morning show, 9 to noon every Saturday. So I've talked about this before, and we've had a lunch that's gone on for I don't know how many years, and it's Frank DeAngelis, Tom Tancredo, and Gary DeFranch. Gary ran Winter Park. And they're all North Denver Italian kids. Mm. I'm bringing that lunch to the air on Saturday. So the old North Denver stories. And of three legends, DeAngelis, Tancredo, and Gary. And it is, when they start telling stories, I just sit back and laugh. And there's three just of the best. Tommy and Frank and Gary are near and dear to me. So I asked them, do you guys want to bring it on the air? And they said, yeah. So down the hall, 9 o'clock next Saturday morning. I can't tell you how much there was how they all came together and did this show, and how the three of them mean so much to me, near and dear to my heart. And to Crowley. You take care of yourselves. Thank you. 9 a.m. Saturday morning. I'll see you down the hall. Thank you, everybody.